Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the first Star Trek marathon. Technically, this would be considered part 3 of the marathon, and today we're going to be obviously talking about Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Um, Now, usually people consider the odd-numbered films to be the bad ones, and the even-number ones to be good. Um, And this one kind of breaks that because this one is actually really good. I think the only problem with it is that with like the whole number thing is that it just came out like right after Rafa Khan, which was, if you guys have already seen my opinions on it, it's the best one out of the franchise. Um, but this is still a very good movie. Um, like I said, it's just the fact that it followed Star Trek 2. Um, but um, but yeah, I still think this is a really good movie. This was released on June 1st of 1984, directed by Leonard Nimoy. Had a budget of 18 million. Domestically made 76 million, and worldwide it made 87 million. Which was pretty good, and it's still good. It was just that it made slightly less than Rafa Khan, which made 97. Um, and oh, and Leonard Nimoy uh, is obviously directing, which is probably the case for why he barely even shows up in the film. He shows up in the flashbacks in the beginning, and then right at the end when, um, I guess spoilers right off the bat, when he comes back as his older, Leonard Nimoy self. Um, that's the only time that he really appears throughout the whole film. Um, So yeah, let's get on to the plot. So Admiral James T. Kirk, played by again William Shatner, has defeated his arch nemesis or his arch enemy, but at great cost. His friend Spock has apparently been killed. The USS Enterprise is being decommissioned, and Starship physician Dr. Leonard McCoy, played by DeForest Kelly, has taken ill. McCoy's odd behavior is evidence his beha- his is evident ev- I can't speak. Evidence he is harboring Spark's Katra. Now, if you guys don't really know what that means, that's basically mean like everything that Spock has learned, like his mind, like everything that he knew. Uh, so Vulcans would do a kind of transfer it over to someone if they knew that they're not going to survive, so that they will still live on, and hopefully that their Katra will be returned to their bodies at some point. It's just that when the body dies, it only takes like you need to return to them at a within like a few set amount of hours before they die. And so here Spock is dead, but his Katra is in McCoy. If McCoy doesn't return to Vulcan with Spock's body and has the Katra removed from him, he will die with the Katra, which means both Spock and McCoy will die. Or, and Kirk seeks to take the Enterprise back to the Genesis planet and find his friend. Rebuffed, Kirk takes dramatic action that results in war with deadly Klingons. Um, so yeah, a pretty kind of complex for this film, and for Leonard Nimoy's first directing debut, I think it's pretty solid. Like I said, it's not as good as Rafa Khan, but um, for an odd number Star Trek film, I think it's pretty good. Um, and actually, I might as well. I already showed you the Blu-ray, so we're just gonna take. I literally just stacked them on the rest of the movies. Um, Um, but yeah, so um, okay, so let's talk about the new cast members for this film. Well, actually, might as well mention my first fun fact, because it kind of has to relate to my to the first new cast member. Savick does return in this film, but unfortunately, she isn't played by Robin Curtis. Well, actually, no, she's played by Robin Curtis and Kirstie Alley from Star Trek 2. Now, the reason why she didn't return is that there's a whole bunch of theories and like rumors about why she didn't return. But from what I gathered, Kirstie Alley wasn't hired for Star Trek 3 because she actually did want to return. She's a massive Star Trek fan. And so when the producers came up to ask her about it, she wanted to do it, but she have she had her agent talk to the producers, um, and her agent um, asked for a huge increase of her salary for this film, and the producers said no. So he went, okay, fine, and then the agent went to not Robin Curtis, Kirstie Alley, and said that they didn't want to hire her because they were gonna pay. He didn't. So the agent said that he didn't accept the offer because the producers claimed that they have made her salary a lot lower than it was before. So even though even though she wanted to return, she didn't have a very good agent, and unfortunately, she wasn't able to return, and they had to cast Robin Curtis, which I don't think it would have been that bad, except for a big mistake that Leonard Nimoy did make when he was talking to Robin Curtis, is that he told her um, not to like watch Star Trek 2 to get information about how to play Savick. He just gave her the information on how a Vulcan is supposed to act, and I really think that's a big shame. Um, and that's probably why she didn't really like she's in the fourth one, but for like a minor bit part. But I'll talk about that later when I get to Star Trek 4. Um, but yeah, I think it's a very big missed opportunity for Robin Curtis. Is that I really think that she could have done a very good performance. It's just the fact that Leonard Nimoy didn't give her the chance. Um, and I think that's really a shame. Um, Merritt Buttrick returns as David Marcus, which he has not only one of my favorite scenes, he's one of my more emotional scenes because this film it gets very emotional. I guess I'll talk about that later. Or actually, no, might as well talk about it now. So, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Um, so both the Enterprise and the Klingon bird of prey that are in orbit of the Genesis planet have been quote unquote like disabled, like they can't move. So it's just a standoff. And Cruz orders that one of the prisoners on the planet is killed, which is David Marcus, Savick, and the young Spock. Um, and one of the Klingons that is going to kill one of the prisoners, one of them. Um, he's gonna kill Savick, but then David steps in, has a brief little scuffle with the Klingon, and he is unfortunately killed. And I think the scene where Savick tells Kirk that David is dead, and he basically breaks down, um, like to Cruz saying, like, "You killed my son." I think that's his best performance ever. And the second most heart wrenching scene, not as much as the David Marcus death, because I honestly think that David Marcus is could have could have done a lot more, but then he was unfortunately killed off. But according to most fans, the more heart wrenching thing is that um, Cruz says, "I'm going to spare your lives, but in order to do that, you must surrender." And he goes, "Okay," and Kirk goes, "All right." Below does Cruz know that Kirk and the crew put on these self-destruct, and as they leave, the Klingons get onto the bridge and hear the countdown, and the Enterprise, the original NCC, one 1701 is destroyed over the planet of over the Genesis planet, and that's the last that we're gonna see of this ship. Um, it's unfortunately destroyed, and actually, I just realized I should probably have this Kirk over here since this is the red uniform. Um, actually, it was right there. Um, so, and then the Enterprise is destroyed, and he another great performance by Shatner is uh, when they see the burning wreckage of the Enterprise in orbit of the Genesis planet, and Kirk goes, "My God, Bones, what have I done?" And he goes, and Bone goes, "What you've always done, turn death into a fighting chance to live." And I think that's a very, very great performance by DeForest Kelly and William Shatner. Um, and as I mentioned, Kruge, who is the Klingon commander of this film and the main villain, is played by the wonderful Christopher Lloyd. I almost said Christopher Lee, who you guys may remember from the Back to the Future trilogy as Dr. Emmett Brown. Um, and um, so they find Spock, and Cruz shows up and says, has the rest of the Enterprise crew beamed aboard except for himself, Kirk, and the uh, Spock's body. And they have a good old fisticuffs, which basically reminds you of the original series of like let's say crew Kirk versus the Gorn, or like well, yeah, mostly just Kirk versus the Gorn in Arena. Um, Mark Leonard returns as Sarek, and he will play a prominent role in films in Star Trek 4 and 6. Um, um, and he shows up to Kirk's kind of apartment from Star Trek 3, and that's where Kirk finds out basically that uh, Sarek finds out that Kirk does not have the Katra within him, and two, they both find out that it was McCoy that had the Katra, and then that kind of sets off the whole sequence of events. And lastly, we have Robert Hooks as Fleet Admiral Morrow, who is the admiral who has to turn down Kirk when Kirk asks for permission to get the Enterprise back, so that he can go to the Genesis planet and get Spock's body, which leads to probably my favorite scene in the whole film, and that's when they steal the Enterprise. They first get McCoy. They first get McCoy, from I guess kind of like solitary confinement or something like that. And then they go to an abandoned transporter site where Uhura is at. Um, where Uhura is at with a lieutenant, or like a junior officer, and actually the quote on the back of the Blu-ray right here, "Be careful what you wish for," is in that scene where right before they meet up, uh, she's talking to the ensign, and he was like, "Wow, I really wish I could meet Admiral Kirk. Like, I feel like he's the best." And then Uhura goes, be careful what you wish for. And then, like, right then, Kirk and the crew walks in, and it's like, whoa. And then immediately Uhura pulls the phaser on him and says, get in the closet. Um, and then Uhura stays behind to energize them up to the Enterprise bridge so that they can steal the Enterprise, which is my favorite scene in the whole film. And so I actually have two fun facts. So the first one I already mentioned is about Kirstie Alley not returning, and the second one is about the Kirk versus Cruz fight scene. Is that did you know that the stage where the final fight between Kirk and Cruz was taking place almost burned it down? So in the like 2 days before filming wrapped on the film, there was a big fire at Paramount Studios where they had where this like uh town set that they had up for like 40 years um was on fire, and William Shatner realized that the stage where the final fight was taking place was right next to it, and it had also caught on fire. And realizing that, well, because he had to go like right after Star Trek 3, he had to go to Colombia to film, I believe, like a TV show or something. So without missing a beat, he grabbed a water hose and started spraying the stage where the final fight was taking place. And luckily, the set was filmed, and they were able to go on with the rest of the filming as scheduled. And even that whole fight scene was supposed to have like the jutting rocks like that you see in the film. There was supposed to be a lot more of that. Um, and the fight's supposed to be a lot bigger, but obviously, if you actually research about it, then you'll know that the rocks barely even moved. Like it was like not like super like fast. It was just like um and so they reduced it down to one where when like right as the fight starts, Krug is elevated by one of the rocks and jumps down on Kirk, and then the whole fight starts off. Um and so yeah, so Leonard Nimoy's first not like this was also not only his first Star Trek film, but his first film in general, because that's how he was able to get signed on to return as Spock, was because they obviously killed him off in two, and he actually got really kind of sad when the day came when they filmed his death, because he actually really liked um he really liked working on Star Trek 2, and he actually wanted the producers to come and ask him about being in Star Trek 3, and he was like, okay, I will, but I want to direct, and they were like, okay, and this film proved to be very successful. Um, like not obviously as successful as two, but um, it still proved a financial success. And uh, judging by the film's merits, I think the critics and people what people say on the internet are very true, because this is a very good film. Like I said, not as good as like 2 or 4 or 6. Um, it's probably like I would probably, if I had to rank these, which um I'll talk about at the end of this video. Um, about what's gonna be coming at the end of the second marathon, which will be next week. Um, but um, but yeah, like I would put this around like 4 or 5. Like it's a very good film. Just not as good as like Star Trek 2 or 6. Um, and we'll um. And so yeah, so as for Leonard Nimoy's first outing in a Star Trek film, I give this film a 8 out of 10. Um, not as good as Star Trek 3. I mean, not as good as Star Trek 2, but certainly an enjoyable ride. And if you want to watch if you're already a Star Trek fan and you just want to pick up a Star Trek film to watch, probably this one wouldn't be the best since you had to watch Star Trek 2 before this. Um, but if you really want to, you can go right ahead if you already know about what happens in the film, and just try and just have a good time. Um, and one thing before I want to get on to what tomorrow's video will be, I want to really talk about the score by James Horner. He returns for this film. Um, not as good as two, but I still think it's a very enjoyable score. Um, and like us, and like with Star Trek 2, actually I didn't mention this in the last video. But both Star Trek 2 and 3 actually went up on Intrada Records. If you don't know that, it's a soundtrack website where you could buy like soundtracks for like majority of films, but you could also buy some like TV stuff there, TV scores as well. And they do have a Star Trek section, and throughout the last uh throughout last week, they did have Star Trek 2 and 3 up there for really good prices, and I did get them. And when they coming, I don't know, but unfortunately, I did not get them in time for this video. Um, but um, but they are coming, and they will be in my collection at some point. Um, so stay tuned for that video whenever it comes out. Um, but the score for this film isn't as good as 2, but I still think it's a very enjoyable score. Um, So yeah, so yeah, that was my review for Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Stay tuned for tomorrow, where I'm going to be talking about uh, one of the most successful Star Trek films of all time. We're going to be talking, well, at the time of its release, it was the most successful Star Trek film, and it still was, I believe, until the reboot of Star Trek from 2009. Yes, we are going to be talking about Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home, um, which is considered to be one of the better of the TOS films. And so, yeah. So, I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys until then. Live long and prosper. Out.